Introduce our next guest, who needs no introduction. Dr. Rand Paul is the founder of Kentucky Taxpayers United. He is an eye surgeon. He is carrying the torch, truly, of his father into the federal government. And Rand Paul could be Kentucky's next greatest senator. Please welcome Rand Paul.
Thank you, Brenda and Ian, for organizing this. My father told me one rule of public speaking when I first began doing this. He says, always beware if there's a crowd behind you, because you can't see if they're going to throw anything. So this is kind of an unusual thing. You got to keep my eyes open just in case. If you come up and say something to me and I don't appear to hear what you're saying, it's because I attended the Knob Creek machine gun shootout this year. Who has been to the Knob Creek machine gun shootout? It's like something out of this world. They've got 50 machine guns set up, and I was smart enough that I did bring ear protection because you can't survive there without ear protection. It's the biggest gun extravaganza I've ever seen, and it may be one of the biggest in the country. They estimated 3,000 people came through there in a day. And it's out in the middle of nowhere. It's it's kind of near 30 miles from Elizabethtown, 30 miles from Litchfield, but it's a big gun extravaganza. You'll find that I'm a little different than many politicians in that I'm not afraid to be associated with guns, go to a machine gun shootout. In fact, when we were on the campaign trail and I gave speeches for my dad, I went to Billings, Montana. And while I was there, what we did is what he's done in a lot of his speeches is we had a raffle and we gave away a shotgun as part of our promotion. We were also lucky enough when we were in Montana to get the endorsement of the Montana Shooters Association. And they're kind of interesting because they are now involved with a constitutional battle, which will probably come forward in the next year. And the idea is that the government has been telling us that the Interstate Commerce Clause is the wide open reason that they can use for the federal government to do anything. So back in the 1940s, they used the Interstate Commerce Clause to tell you how much wheat you could grow on your land, even if you consumed it by your own livestock. There was a famous case, Wickard v. Filburn, and the Supreme Court ruled that you don't have the right to decide how much wheat you can grow on your own land, even if you consume it, because by consuming your own wheat, you could potentially affect the price of interstate wheat. So it's a big stretch, but that's what they've done. There have been cases now that say if anything that is sold within a state could somehow tangentially affect commerce, they can regulate it. Well, what they're going to do in Montana, and the Montana Shooters Association as part of this, is they're going to manufacture the guns completely within the state of Montana, and they're going to be printed on them, made in Montana, and they're going to be for sale in Montana. It's not going to be part of interstate commerce, and they're going to challenge the federal government to come in. I hope they have a good sheriff like your sheriff here. But they're going to challenge the federal government in a legal way, not in a way where we're going to have a war, but we want them to come in and challenge them legally and say, look, you have no right to tell us what to do with the guns in our county. You talk to our sheriff. And hopefully they'll get a sheriff that stands up to them, not in a violent way, but in a court way, and fights a court battle. And we'll see what happens. I tell people that I am a big fan of the Second Amendment. I can't claim that I'm a great hunter or a great sportsman with guns. I do have a shotgun just in case in my house. If anybody's coming over unannounced, do know that I have it. I think one of our best protections, though, is not just having the shotgun in your house, is that no one knows who has one and who doesn't have one. It's the whole idea that, the Japanese coming over here and not knowing. It's the whole idea of home invasion. They say that's one of the things why we have less home invasion than they have in Europe. We have worse crimes in some ways here, but the one thing we tend to have less than most countries that have gun control is less home invasion, because it's uncertain who has the gun and who doesn't have the gun, so people are less likely to break into your house. There's a surgeon in my town, and a couple years ago he was taking care of this boy who had been shot in a home invasion. And they were going down, and this big tough punk that had broken into somebody's house was whining, "Mama, that woman shot me, she shot me." And the doctor that was going with him was getting ready to repair his leg. He said, "Well, I guess that's sort of an occupational hazard if you're going to break into houses." So, and I think he broke in with an axe, but she had a gun. So I guess she won that battle. But I tell people, if you believe in the Second Amendment, you really have to believe in all of the amendments. You can't have the Second Amendment without the First Amendment. The First Amendment has been gutted in recent years. McCain-Feingold tells us that if you are part of a gun movement here and you say, my congressman voted for gun control, and you want to buy an ad on television before the election, it's illegal. How can we live in America where it's illegal to buy an advertisement criticizing a candidate? That's what McCain-Feingold did, and that's why John McCain really doesn't understand the Constitution. We have to believe in the First Amendment. You have to believe in the First Amendment to protect the Second Amendment. But likewise, you have to believe in the Fourth Amendment. And this is where it gets kind of tricky, because a lot of us, we don't want to be attacked. We don't want, terrorists to come in our country, and we want to be protected. But you have to believe in the Fourth Amendment. So we passed something called the Patriot Act. And the Patriot Act does exactly what your sheriff says we're not supposed to have, is that when he became the sheriff in historical times, the sheriff could do anything they wanted. We have not only elections, like he said, that control it, but he's also controlled by the Fourth Amendment. He doesn't break down a door without a warrant. But the Patriot Act has changed that, and it's allowed us now where the warrants can be written by military officers. And that's a real danger. And you can say, oh, well, we have to go after those terrorists. But beware, the rules are for everyone. So what happens is they may write the rules and they're passed in a hysterical fear after 9/11. But what happens is the rules apply to everyone. So what's going to happen is, like some of the instances you heard of people with firearms violations. It sounds so ominous. Your name's in the paper and you've committed a firearms violation. What does that mean? Well, what if a military officer can write a warrant, come into your house, and they say you might be a terrorist? They get in there and they find out you're not, but they find a gun with a trigger lock's been disabled. Or they find that your weapons weren't locked in a cabinet, if that's a rule. Or they find they're a little bit shorter than they should be, or they fire in a little bit different way. Do we want a government that can invade your house and do that? It used to be, we had security measures, and they said if they went into your house under a security warrant, they had judges. They used to have judges write these warrants, but we don't have that anymore. But it used to be if they came into your house and they said, oh, well, he's a small businessman and he was painting his office and he brought some paint home, who hasn't done something like that and painted their house, it's a tax violation. But because they came in looking for terrorism, they found some paint that I was using at my office and I'm now using at home. I've now committed a crime, and the warrant had nothing to do with that, but now I can go to jail for a tax violation. It becomes very dangerous that you can have trumped up violations that they go through your entire house and try to find a violation. Now with cap and trade, they'll go through your house and find out you didn't weatherize your windows properly. There is a danger. You want limitations. And when people tell me that they're very fearful of terrorists and they want to have all the rules to go into houses to get these people, I say be very, very careful and think about it this way. When your sheriff goes to someone's house who's accused of rape, murder, child molestation, any of these awful things, it's a despicable person on the other side of the door, he still goes with a warrant. So even the worst remnants of our society, the people that are awful, that have to be in jail and we have to keep away from us, he has a warrant when he goes there. It's very important. The process is not just a piece of paper. It's a judge and it goes through a process. It's to keep him, and I've had politicians that tell me, they say, well, I'm a good person. Your sheriff's a good person. He doesn't need those rules. Well, he does, because the next guy might not be so good. I had the mayor in my town tell me that she voted against restrictions on eminent domain because, well, you know me, I won't go take private property. I disagree with what they've been doing through eminent domain. I said, it's not about you. It's about when we make the mistake and we elect Hitler next time, that person will be restrained by the law. It's not about getting just good individuals. It's about having the law restrain all individuals once they're in office. So if you believe in the Second Amendment, you have to believe in the First Amendment. You have to believe in the Fourth Amendment. You have to believe in the Ninth and Tenth Amendment, that the government doesn't have powers. If they're not enumerated, they're left with the people and with the states. We need to have positions where the sheriff becomes a much more powerful position than the guy in Washington. The federal authorities become weaker and weaker positions. The tide may be turning among the people. You see the Tea Party movements arising, some of the gun movements arising, people are angry. But the tide in Washington is completely the opposite. We have the strongest majority for increasing government